Hi everyone, this is part 3 of my Threadripper build. Today I'm going to be drilling holes, installing the radiators and the pump, and hopefully getting a test loop going. So I'm going to try and get a complete loop built. The first thing I need to do is drill a few holes. Okay, so I was about to drill holes for the pump and I realised I had a slight problem. Although I'd measured the distances for everything, you can see I've got a series of joins here. And I've got a rotary fitting here which is joined to a rotary fitting and a rotary 90 to fit onto the pump. I've screwed that in. I took this fan off to make that a bit easier, but I've screwed that in and you can see it all works nicely. It's all joined, but the problem is, and the reason I use rotaries here is to give myself a little bit of manoeuvrability, but the problem is if we go round to the other side, you can see that the fill port is actually sticking out by quite some margin. So I either need to redesign the fill port somehow or work out how to move. I'll move the wires out of the way. Sorry, I put the side on to see if it would actually go on. It won't, surprisingly. What I need to do is work out how to extend this piece here. I don't think I can extend this using a tube because I'd need then two fittings, one for each end of the tube. Even if I use a very, very short piece of hard tubing or soft tubing, that's not going to work. So what I really need is a longer one of these by about 5mm. So I might have to buy something before continuing. Okay, I think I found a bodge which I'm going to test, and that is this. This is how it was before. That was joined into the radiator. Then I had a rotary here joined into the angle bracket, and then this rotary which gave me flexibility to fit this into the radiator. So as a complete bodge, what I think I can do is use one of these through fittings which are actually designed for going through the case. I'll need to buy another one of these. If I do this, if this works, but I'm going to use this in a completely bodged way for its not intended purpose at all. Screw two of these smaller joint male to males into this female to female. Then I can attach that to the angle bracket and then this to here, and that will give me a bit more length. But the question is that going to be too much length? Because when that goes into the case like this and that goes on there, it might mean that when this goes into the pump, this will now stop the shroud, and you can see where the shroud fits in. These holes here are the markers of where the shroud goes. So these feet on the pump can't come any further back than that, because that's going to be a problem. So I'm going to test this out and hopefully it will work. On the plus side, I do have two options for this, because the pump's got an in-port and an out-port. It doesn't matter which is connected to that radiator. So I've got two different chances of using this longer now fitting on either one of these ports. Although if it is the out-port, it will make my life more difficult, because then the in-port will have to be spun around to the bottom. I'm not sure that will work, but I've at least got a chance. Okay, so now we've just got that little extra length on this port. Now this might be too much. Let's give it a go and find out. Okay, so with a lot of fiddly thumb work there, I've actually managed to attach that to there. With the extended length, it doesn't quite come to where the shroud is, so we're pretty much on the tolerance of where that can go. But if I go around the other side, on the other side, this fill port is now within the confines of the case, so the side will be able to go on, and that is going to be tight, but that's pretty good. I'm quite happy with that solution, because it means that I can actually get on with work today without needing to wait for some more female fittings to arrive. I'm quite happy with this solution. It's a proper bodge, but it has worked. I've chained up a load of fittings there, so all different brands, all different sizes, all different colours and types, but it will work. I've got a black followed by a black Fantex, followed by a, I think it's an EK silver, followed silver male to male, followed by a Bits Power black female to female, another EK male to male, and then finally an EK brass coloured or copper coloured or nickel coloured maybe angle rotary. So that's a potential leak hazard right there, and this is one of the reasons that I want to test this before I put any components in the case. But I've now got enough space to drill the hole, so now I know exactly where the pump's going. I can drill the holes for the pump, and as you can see, luckily we've got just enough tolerance there. I do have a slight concern over these wires, but they should go pretty flat and be able to bend around back into the case towards the PSU. Okay, so to get these holes in the right place for the pump, it comes with a template. That's going to be really helpful. You can see that maps to the feet of the pump like that, so I can stick the template under there. Obviously I need to get the template in the correct place, and that's fairly easy. What I'm going to do is put the pump as I want it. I've got my pencil here, and I'm just going to mark using this as a ruler where the various parts are. So I'm just going to draw along the sides, and this curves the important part like that. So I've drawn around the curve. You can see there that I've drawn it. Unfortunately, I can't put the pencil through the screw hole. That would be the easiest way to do it. Just put the pencil through the screw hole and do a dot, but I can't sharpen the pencil well enough. So this will have to do. And now I've got my pencil lines. I can take the pump back off, and you can see, hopefully you can see on the film, pencil lines are where this needs to go. Now this, as you can see, is a square, so I can't just line that up very easily. So I'm going to use scissors just to cut out the template, because otherwise, if I just try and do that by eye, I'll probably get a couple of mils out, or a mil, half a mil out, and it will be harder to screw in. So you can see I've just gone around it with scissors so I can see where that is, and that will then match up exactly to here. I can stick that down. I've only bothered cutting out one side. I don't need to do both. As long as it lines up one side, it will line up both. So I will put that like that so it lines up in my holes. Stick that down and then drill the holes. So let's stick that down. This is where I mess up with the simplest part of the job, with the sticker. It would have been easier if they had cut around this for you, so you could do this. Okay, so that's that. And that. Okay, before I actually drilled into the case, I got this bit of metal from the case. It's the same case, it's hard drive bay I don't need. I've just drilled a hole in it just to test the drill size. So just to get the right drill bit, I did measure it and found the best one. Actually, first time I got the right bit. You can see that's the perfect size for the screws for the pump. So that will go in, that's perfect. You can see that my hole is fairly neat as well. So I'm going to use that drill bit to drill the holes. Okay, let's crack on and get drilling. Okay, now for the moment of truth, let's see if it fits. Hopefully my drilling was okay. I did follow the template for the most part. Just offering that up, it looks good to me, and you can see that it's not going to extend beyond the case because the pump's on the floor. So as long as that isn't touching the desk here, that's going to be fine. And the holes look pretty good. I'm just going to put some screws in just to test, and then tighten them up after I've got them all in. Okay, with that done, it's now time to drill the hole for the radiator. If you remember, I've got the radiator coming down here, so I've got the radiator coming along this way and stopping here, and I'm going to drill a hole just here. Before I do that, I want to measure where that hole needs to be, and to drill it I'm using one of these hole boring drill bits, so I'm going to drill through. I'm going to make the hole larger than it needs to be because it won't really matter. I don't need to screw anything to this hole. I just need to pass through a fitting. So I'm just going to go to the maximum size of this, which is 22mm, which should be more than enough to fit through the to pass through the drill bit. And I need to measure where the hole needs to be drilled. And to do that, I'm going to use a bit of paint. I'll show you what I'm going to do. And one problem I've got now is I can't stand the case back up because of these screws. So I could stand it up, but it will be lopsided, and I don't want to damage my worktop here because this is actually a kitchen worktop and I don't want to scratch it with these screws that are sticking out. So I don't want to put this back up on the side until all the holes are drilled. I can put the bottom back on, and once I've done the bottom, I can then stand it up. Okay, so what I need to do now is line this port here, the bottom port, up with the bottom of the case where it's going to sit. So that's going to be in there like that, and I want a hole just here under the port. Hopefully you can just about see it on the camera. There's a hole there. So that's lined up with the fan. I've put the fan on there, and I've just put a couple of screws in loosely just to keep the fan on attached to the case. So that allows me to line it up, and that will then, I can now run this up and down to whatever size I want. And to actually get the point in the right place, what I'm going to do, if I just prop that up slightly for a moment, I'm going to put some paint on here. So I've just got some old paint from when we did the bedroom, and I'm going to just pop a little bit of blue paint, tiny amount, don't need much at all, on the fitting. You could use anything here, Tipp-Ex, even glue, whatever. I just wanted something that would allow me to mark it. So just put a tiny amount of blue paint on there. Not a lot, just a small amount. And you can see, if I show you that, there's just a bit of blue paint on there. So now what I'm going to do is move that back into the case, line it up with the fan, so that's where the fan hole is, you can just about see it, and then just run down and have the radiator touch the bottom of the case. And it's actually left a very small mark, but it gives me a starting point. So the mark that's left is actually tiny. You can see there's only a small mark there, but that's more than enough to work with. I can use that as the basis of where to drill. As I say, I'm going to make the hole bigger than it needs to be. So now it's time to drill that hole out. I'm going to remove the pump to do this. I won't bother showing you unscrewing it because it's going to be in the way of the drill when I try and drill through. Okay, that didn't quite go to plan. I had to drill a couple of other holes to get the thing in the right place, but you can see it's not too bad. I just had to do 2 extra holes in the bottom of the case, but no one's going to see that because it'll be under the shroud here, and it'll be under the radiator from the back, and it'll be under the feet, or behind the feet at the top. So now I'm going to put the bottom of the case back on, I'll put the pump on, put the bottom of the case back on, put the radiator back in properly, and hopefully we shouldn't have to move this again, but we shall see. Okay, one thing that has worked well is this. You can see when the bottom's on, the fitting here has got plenty of room. There's no issue of space there at all, so I can actually position the radiator around a bit as well. And even with the feet on, it's not in the way. So you can see this is the gap where these feet go on like this. That will go on there, and again the radiator, the fitting is not in the way. So what I do need to do is, as I said before, make this lip bigger so that I can pass a piece of tubing from, as you can see there, from that fitting to here. And that's going to be hopefully angled down slightly so that I can run it between this part of the plastic that I'm moving and the part that's on the case. Okay, that's everything installed and screwed in. That's really sturdy. The radiator's in with the fans at the front and rear for push-pull, and we've got our little port at the bottom. So I can run a piece of hard tubing under the case. I'm now going to put the feet on the case, but first thing I need to do is file away the lip. File away this lip so it's lower. If you look at the other end, so I showed you in the other video, that end's significantly lower, and you can actually fit a tube in the height of the case. So I just need to file this down slightly. It shouldn't take too long, but I won't bother filming that. But in a second you'll hopefully see it filed down. Okay, I filed that down, and just to show you why I needed to do that, and you can see I've issued a file, but little bit of plastic still on there, but I filed that down. I'll sand that a little just to give it a nice finish. But the reason I did that, if you remember, is so that can go under there, which then goes under this foot. Without doing that, there wasn't enough space for this tubing to fit between this foot and this lip. So now this is going to run up and attach to that fitting at the other end. So I now need to attach a hard tube fitting to compression fitting to here, and attach this to the fitting at the bottom of the case, and then I can put the base on. I've now fitted the bottom panel of the case, and you can see I've got my hard tubing here, which is then attached to that fitting that I just drilled earlier today. So that fitting that's coming off the bottom port of the radiator, just in there, goes through into the bottom panel. The tube runs up along the panel and out the back, and it will then join onto a radiator here. But I'm going to need some sort of 90 degree or some female to female to attach this hard tube to a soft tube to go up into the rear radiator. Okay, I've attached most of the parts so I can see where the water cooling needs to go. You can see here I've got the pump. I've also attached an angle bracket, that's the pump, so that we can see where this tube's going to go. So this tube's going to come out, and I'm going to attach it to the shroud, so it will come through up here somehow to a probably 90 degree angle, and then up into the GPU. You can see I've got my two fake fans here. What I am going to do is cut this ring, so on these two fake fans I've still got the ring for this segment of the fan, so I'm just going to cut a quarter of that off, or half of it off, so we can still get a bit of the IGB strip there. And what I've done what I've put the rear radiator on for is to test where to actually drill the hole. Somewhere here, and I put this on because I didn't want to come through where these fan joins are. So I either need to come through just here below this fan block and between the bottom one, or in between these two, either at the top there or the bottom. I need to work out how far I need to drill this way, whether it's closer to the edge of the case or to the bottom, to line up with this hole. So before I drill any holes, I'm going to put the bend in this tube and do the tube first, so that I can get the position right on the back of the case. This video was shot out of sequence, I'm afraid. My camera for some reason didn't record me drilling the hole in the back of the case. And you can see that the hole in the back of the case is there. This is actually a complete, the system is running, there's water running through it at the moment. But you can see there I've drilled the hole with the back of the case, passed through one of those fittings, and attached a angle bracket, which then goes up to the top here. I had to add 290 angle brackets here to make this a straight line, and in fact I'm going to replace that. I've got a piece coming hopefully tomorrow or the day after to replace that, and I'm going to use that before I fill the rest of the parts. But I've got this silver part here. I had to unfortunately have the uglier side of this pass-through fitting running, because without that, I don't think you can quite see it from here, but without that there was not enough room for a 90 angle bracket behind this fan, so between the side of the case and the radiator inside this fake fan. So apologies again for this being a bit out of sequence. One thing I am also going to do, if you can see there, hopefully the camera will eventually focus, you can see that the black paint on here has come off. So the black paint here has come off, but I've got a fix for that. I could paint it, but it would make it hard to take out. I've actually got two of those extra rings that go on top of them for where I've used them at the bottom there and at the bottom of the case, which I'll come on to shortly. So these will go on and disguise the fact that the black paint's come off. At the bottom, I was able to connect this up fairly nicely, so that comes out the back of the case, and then I've got a T-join there, followed by a one of those join fittings again. That again just happened to be the right height, so I've used my other one of these Bits Power female to female connectors just here because it happened to be correct. So I need yet another one of those, but they have proven to be very useful, albeit expensive ways of tubing. wrapped everything in tissue a bit overzealously, but it will allow you to detect leaks. If it leaks there, it will drip onto here. There's nothing in the case, so even if there is a leak, it's not going to damage anything. It's really just so I can tell quickly. This is the dangerous joint here. I couldn't actually wrap that, but I've put a piece of tissue paper underneath, so I'll be able to see if it's leaking at all. And the same with this one. The one under here, I obviously wasn't able to wrap. I could have done it, but it would have taken dismantling the entire loop. And then if there was a leak, if I did fix the leak, I put it back together, I wouldn't know if I'd fixed it. So I've just put a piece of tissue paper here that I can pull out, and if there's any water on it, I know there's a leak or a drip. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is use this fill port to fill the reservoir. I'm not going to turn it on first of all. First of all, I'm going to fill it and see if there's any leaks below the reservoir point, because all the water will trickle through. I should be able to see if there's any leaks at this end or at the bottom end. That's before I even turn anything on. For filling, I'm using Mayhem's Ultra Pure H2O just for my test purposes. I'm also using it to flush the radiators. Rather than lifting up this 5 litre can above my head and having it a bit awkward, I've just decanted it into a smaller jug for filling. And I'm just going to slowly run some water down into the reservoir and let it fill. At the moment, I can't see any leaks, which is good. Just going to put a bit more in. It should be running down, first of all, to the bottom of the tube, so it should be coming out here somewhere. And before I go any further, I'll put a little bit of water in. It should now have sat in this bottom tube. I'm just going to test, if I can prop that up somehow, I'm just going to test the various pads at the bottom. Okay, no leaks so far, so I'm going to carry on filling and try and fill most of the reservoir. So this now should be filling the reservoir and the bottom tube. And you can see it just moved up. If you saw that, it moved up into here. And in fact, that might be as much as I can fill it before turning the pump on. So I'll let that just flow through. There's not any obvious leaks because this water level is staying as it is. Okay, I've connected up the pump. I'm just going to run that quickly. It's on. You can see that's pumping round now. Before the reservoir gets empty, I want to make sure that I've filled it with more water. So now actually a tube full of water. Let's let that run. Okay, so there was a leak. There's a leak at this fitting just here. Okay, I've redone that fitting up there. I've reattached the barb. I think it was slightly loose. So I've now reattached all my things. I've put some new kitchen towel on so I can test to see if there's a leak. At the moment, we're all good. I'm going to try filling again from the other side. Okay, if you can see the drips here, it's actually the funnel that's leaking, so I'm going to stop filling it that far up and make sure there's no water in the funnel itself. Now, one problem I do have is I can't bleed the reservoir, and I did anticipate this might be an issue. I need some way of getting the air out the top of the reservoir because the outlet of the pump is above the inlet. So although it has been pumping, and you can see there's water in all the tubes, it has a slight vortex effect. So for bleeding, I've turned the case the right way up, so it's now on its side, and I can fill it from here. So I'll now fill it. I've put another drain port on the end of here, so I can open and close this fill tube. I'll probably leave that on there and just shorten it and leave it in the case. But I'm going to now fill using this new fill port. Okay, I've now filled and bled the system. Well, I say bled. You can see there's still a lot of air bubbles moving around. This was really a dry run for bleeding the actual system when it's all in place with the green fluid. But mission accomplished insofar as there are no there are no leaks. So yeah, this is a dry run, pun intended, for the real system with all the components installed. Obviously there'll be more leaks to look out for in the real system because I'm going to have more connections. I don't currently have the CPU block or the GPU block installed. I'm going to leave this running for a couple of hours to make sure it bleeds correctly and also ensure there's no leaks after a bit of time. Okay, I've now got a test loop running. There's no leaks. It's been running for about 40 minutes now. I'll give it another 20 minutes before disconnecting it. I tried the pump on max. You can see there's still a few air bubbles in there, so it'll take a while for those to work themselves out. I had to turn the case on its side to bleed the radiator. I thought that might be required because of the way I mounted the pump. Unfortunately, the pump was unable to take enough water in at the bottom if the water level was only half full. So unfortunately that caused the problem where I had to turn the case on its side. As you can see, it is now, it's on its side. That's floor down there. So the case is on its side and I'm going to have to fill it like this each time. So anytime I want to fill this loop, I'm going to have to turn the case on its side. That's a bit of a pain and it is rather heavy, but I'll have to put up with that for having the pump where it is. So that's it for today's video. The loop is running. The next video is going to be me showing everything working. And the battery on my camera is about to die, so I will leave it there for today.